Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Diaz and Zach Gaeta of Diaz and Gaeta. And so, we were talking a little bit about, some of your clients and the issues they face, but let's kind of get into that a little bit more about how, what are the challenges? What are they bringing forward to you?
So the way I view it, because you kind of organize in your head, is most cases fit in a box of, let's say, 15, 20 types of cases, right? I crossed the border back in the 30 years ago, right? And I've got 5 United States citizen kids, 2 of them are in college. I've got a construction company. I'm a contractor.
Right. I pay taxes my whole life. I've been a benefit to society. I can prove that. It should be obvious to prove that what I've done.
So it should be easy just because of what I've done to be able to let somebody know, and then the federal government will say, of course, good job, we'll forgive this, boom.
Yeah. But can I be devil's advocate here? If I was the federal government, I would say, why did it take you 30 years to tell us this? I would be pissed off to an extent too, because if you were such a value to society, why in year 5 didn't you go through this process?
Because they know there's no value. Because there's no path.
Got it.
Right?
So we're using a stick, not a carrot.
Yeah, there's no path, and that's why you have, the millions and millions and millions of people this way. Because if they make that journey, we're talking geographically. We're in Georgia. There's the Mexican border. A lot of our clients are from Mexico, Central America. That specific story is crossing the border, getting
peril for a lot of money, giving up a lot to get here every time.
A lot, being I guess exposed to traffickers and violence and
talk about
robbed.
bad actors.
Yeah, tons of bad actors in there. But they get here and they're like, I need help. So probably 60 to 70% of the people that I consult with, I'm just like, I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do. And I mean, that's kind of the issue. The issue that we see is that luckily we have enough business, right? Because there are enough people that we can help. Right. But it's a minority. It's a small percentage of the people that we consult with.
Yeah, and then all you're doing by saying no is driving them further underground, which is part of the problem, because there's no recourse and there's no naturalization way to do this. So you're just driving them to the fringes and underground.
And unfortunately, what it ends up doing is it forces most of us who have been in the game for a long time to look at creative routes, right? Yeah. So then the federal government gets upset that we use these creative routes, but we do them ethically, right? No one's committing any fraud. We're just saying, hey, if you apply
you're working
for this,
in the parameters of the law.
You're going around to try to get to a certain spot. But the problem is that creates another backlog, another inefficiency in the system. And the crazy thing is, some of the folks that we see that are kind of at the center of the massive debate, the folks that are recently showing up at the border asking for asylum, anecdotally speaking to my colleagues, like 20-30% of these folks that are getting here, they were tired of waiting 15 years for their visa to become available. Yeah, right. They want to be with their mom.
That gets to the root. Look, that gets to the root of the supply-demand issue. And I think one of the things we do a poor job teaching in this country is supply-demand. The demand to be in this country so far outweighs the supply that it would take 20 to 30 years. My understanding is just for India as a country, the visas would take 20 years to fulfill the visa obligations from a country like India. And we have darlings. We switch as a country who we show favoritism for coming. People forget. But my mother came from Italy in the 1960s, and the words that they would call Italians and Irish and those wave of immigration were insane, especially when you were leaving the Mussolini era, World War II. There has been parts of immigration change, and there are times we closed the borders. After 9/11, after when we first went to Iraq in the 90s, we constricted policy. This has been such an ongoing thing of adjustment to policy as opposed to rewriting policy, that this is not a blip on the radar. This has been a consistent thing for the duration of this country, has dealt with things like this. It's just changed its forms.
And what's scary now is just another budget. I mean, it's just like we understand when we hear the government budget starts shifting between defense and education and all that. We've always had immigration. We're founded on immigration, but the reality of what you're saying is the places you can bring in legally immigration is a budget thing that gets shifted based on politics.
It's a sliding curve.
I mean, it's
a sliding curve.
And how we look at foreign policy and things like that. I mean, that's really what's happened for 100 years.
Look,
it has been.
Let's just say it clear. We are going to something we have not known as a world for a long time, where there's a lot of Zionism. There's a lot of people that are becoming populist. There's a lot of these things that are bringing people back, which usually those are the type of leaders that people want to get away away from. So we're going into that phase where it might start coming from other places that we are least expecting. I know, as of this recording, this week was when Canada finally said they were the darling. They were taking everybody. They're like, all right, everyone America doesn't want because we're pretty much your attic anyway. We're taking everybody. Anybody that you could say we're taking them. You know what they said? Because there are people like, there's no jobs for us. Just this week, Canada said, we're done. We are changing our company policy. We have to go more into, there's too many problems. We have to fix ourselves. So even the people who are trying to be the good actors here are starting to realize it is unsustainable. So
nothing lasts forever.
When we talk about it, that's part of the context is people don't understand. We did this job. All your job in life is in a business is to create demand and then have enough supply to do it. As a country, we have done the proudest thing we can do, created all demand. And when all demand comes, we're like, oh, sorry, screw you guys. So it's just crazy. And it's not just from the border. It's from every part of the world and everything. And everyone has an asylum story. So I just think, to give some context, how many people want it in 20 years isn't even unheard of. So that's part of the problem with the reform is these are the parameters you're working in. So going around and finding loopholes to work in these parameters, you're trying to fix a never-stopping problem, a never-ending problem. Yeah, you should find any way to do it you possibly can. So talk about some of those loopholes. Talk about, there's this person. Here's one set of the law that they could work with. Just give an idea of the stuff lawyers do. Yeah. What is it that lawyers do other than going to court, other than trial? Talk about some of the
this is a loophole that I feel comfortable talking about in public,
please,
right? So this is a loophole. One of the loopholes.
We did not rehearse this, by the way. I take no liability for anything that he says.
The loopholes is, because of some natural disasters and political issues, there's a small group of people that have this thing called temporary protective status, right? Salvadorians and Hondurans are a gigantic group of people that either came in the late 90s, early 2000s that have this special status, right? They were given this special status because, again, there were some natural disasters that happened then and some political stuff that happened in El Salvador.
And these are tiny countries.
These
are tiny. Like, if you're talking to 2,000, 3,000 people get out, you're talking about a percent of the population. These are tiny countries. 2-3 million people, right? They're tiny.
And the State Department every year, every when it's time to redesignate, they look at the situation in the country, and they're like, all right, we'll designate it. But what's going on? They've been designating temporary protective status now for 20 plus years, right? For both these countries. And so these people are here, they have businesses, they have children here, their grandchildren are here. So when stuff comes around, when there's policy shift and people are told, okay, now we're going to get rid of this temporary protective status, they freak out, right? Because they're like, what do you mean you're going to send me back to? I don't even remember. I think I was 17 when I showed up here. Now I'm 15.
A lot of the times we hear the term too, asylum, around the political, immigration versus true immigration, and I don't know if that kind of ties into some of what you're talking about or not.
Yeah, asylum. I think the word asylum gets
it's misconstrued.
Yeah, misconstrued. I think that there's a lot of misinformation about the asylum.
They make it
system.
a catch-all.
Right.
They make it a catch-all, yeah.
And you could be seeking asylum for many different things. Like
for many
special protected status. And before you go to, because I want to go to asylum, one question for you. Do the local cops know that Salvadorians were granted that special status? Because here's the problem. That is a function of a federal government. The local government can have their own. Do they even know that they shouldn't be poking around because, do they even know the difference between a Honduran and a Salvadorian?
They don't have to. They don't have to, because if they're granted temporary protective status and they have work authorization cards, which allows them to get their licenses from the DDS, so for all intents and purposes, they're here legally.
Got it.
So they don't really have to worry about that stuff. They're just worried every 18 months. Is this thing going to happen again?
Right.
Is this thing going to happen again? And they go through that same cycle, wondering when the Department of State is going to redesignate or renew this whole thing. So one of the loopholes, right? A lot of these people enter without inspection 30 years ago, right? Meaning, when I say enter without inspection, it means they crossed the border without a visa, right? And now their kids are 21 years old. Well, if they enter without inspection, they're not eligible for green cards, even if their kids want to petition for them. Because of that simple fact.
And their kids are citizens. That's the dreamers. They're born here.
I've been told that I'm 21 now. One of the categories is you can petition your parents. Well, they can't.
Because they don't have a visa to start with.
And the petition goes nowhere, because one of the ridiculous requirements of the law, not ridiculous, but it's just weird that they have to have entered with a visa, regardless of being here 30 years.
So we're offering a temporary status that allows them to come in without a visa, and then we hold it against them for not having a visa.
Right. So they have
sounds about right.
So they have government thing. So what do? We have to figure out a loophole to get them a green card, right? One of the loopholes is if you have temporary protective status because you've had it for 30 years, they allow you to petition for a travel permit, right? So now you can go travel to see your mom, who's maybe dying or whatever. You travel. When you come back, you now come back with inspection, with parole. So now you've entered with inspection, your kid could petition you, and you can become a legal permanent resident. So that's one of the more common loopholes that you see that we use.
And you can go. Can you just go across the border to Mexico, or do you have to go home? I mean, you would think you just go to San Diego, drive down to Tijuana, cross the border, come back. And
if you're granted that permission, that parole document, then you can.
Right.
Yeah.
And from Mexico.
Got it.
Because a lot of people can't. They either Central America, they got to go all the way to Central America, but Mexico would be easier because of the proximity, of course.
Got it.
Right?
So you can't just do what I did when I lived in San Diego and said I want to go down to TJ for a couple of days for some tacos, and I won't say what else. But okay, all right, context. So that's a loophole.
That's a loophole too. You know, everybody talks about DACA, right? That's one of the loopholes too, right? The DACA kids, if there's a humanitarian reason, like they got sick family members.
Right.
You know, even though they've been here since they were 3, right? They're terrified to travel. Like, you have the travel documents. Like, I don't want to leave. What if I can't come back?
Let me ask you this question, and this is maybe an unpopular question, but you've probably interacted with many people in the bureaucracy, Health and Human Services and Homeland Security, and those people. What do you feel about most of these people? Are they in this business because they want to help? Are they in it for a job? Are they genuinely care? Do they have history with families?
There's a wide range. There's a wide range.
Overall, and I know it's broad stroking, but for the purpose of this conversation, have you been like, after these conversations, like, you know what, this person really cares. I'm glad I do this. At least there are people out there who care. Or are you like, this is just a broken system?
No, the system is broken. Right. But within the system, most of these bureaucrats, I think there's a wide range. And honestly, I think most of them believe in what they're doing.
Either way.
I've had the privilege that because, I'm somewhat ethical in what I do, some of my...
You guys didn't see his air quotes.
Some of my very good friends are trial attorneys from ICE, are immigration judges.
Right.
And I'm in the private bar. And that's kind of an unheard thing.
That's lawyers, man. I mean, and the DUI attorneys know all the guys who try them. I know this game. Let's not pretend like this in the world. Sure. That's part of a good lawyer's job is to know the people. And you're not gaining favoritism, but you're making sure they recognize your face. They're making sure you know you're a good dude.
Yeah. So some are believers. Yeah. Some are true believers. Some people are just there just to get the paycheck.
Yeah. Zach, what about you, bud?
Oh, it's the same way, especially when you're dealing with sheriff's departments, when you're dealing with the DA's office, the district attorney's offices and stuff, and a lot of it comes from up top, right? It depends on the who is who elected official in that county, right? And I think a lot of them, as of recent, the more metropolitan areas, you're seeing a lot of them that are understanding that we've got immigration. You don't want these people to leave because they're benefiting out.
This is where, but this is also where representation matters. Correct. And most urban centers have done a really good job of representation, where the communities of people that are serving the people are representative of who's there. It goes a long way. I mean, there's been so many studies that have shown how important representation is.
Absolutely.
In these things. And I think what you see is if the boss came in or their family came in illegally and they're illegally, then it empowers the people below them to say, hey, this is my story. And those stories become viral, and it makes it easier for people to be, okay, you know what? The system might be broken, but I have somebody on my side. Yeah. And I bet you some of the people that come in to see you just need a shoulder to cry on sometimes also.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a lot of people talking people off cliffs. And one of the things that we train our staff in is like, I know it's hard. You're just answering phones or you're being a paralegal, but like you can't take a lot of this stuff personally. We don't put up with abuse from our clients, but I know where some of the abuse comes from because the stress levels are through.
I mean, if you're trying to call the government to get a hold of them and you wait for 50 minutes to get nobody, or goes into, even to try to get issues resolved in the government's favor, sometimes it takes 2 hours of a phone call and then it just gets conveniently disconnected. It's like they don't want to talk.
Yeah. Well, it happens to us too. So good luck trying to get a hold of somebody in Fulton County.
They want them mailed out USPS.
So it could disappear, and now it's just a scapegoat. You can I lost it.
Now we're the bad guys because like, how come it didn't show up? I was like, because we had to send it by USPS. Stuff shows up after the date of the appointment they had to go to. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, look. The reason we asked all these questions is I wanted to frame who you guys serve, what it's like, because look, let's have the marketing conversation, right? You are reaching, and I know word of mouth is strong, don't get me wrong, but you still need to have PR and HR and all these people deal with. Let's talk a little bit about the marketing. So there's a subset of people that you are trying to serve who probably are not the biggest consumers of TV, who are probably not out driving as much. How do you reach these people? How many people are out there that need help that you wish you knew you could reach? Talk about social media. It's important because we talk about a lot of the negative sides of social media. I think this might be one of the things where social media provides so many resources.
Everybody has a smartphone, and some of these old cats are like, no, your clients are undocumented. No, they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. They know how to use social media. They have smartphones. All right, they had smartphones in their countries. I mean, I don't know. They're not coming from the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Well, I
there's
think that's
misconception.
there's a big misconception, and so I live in downtown Alpharetta, and I walk around all the time, and look, we have a few homeless people that I've seen now because I've been there 5 years, and there's some that just move around. And recently I was walking one night, and I know this one couple, and I've offered them, the times here and there, and they're sitting down, under a business that's, closed for the evening or whatever, and they're both sitting on their smartphones. I mean, so I'm kind of digressing, but there's a lot of things in your clients as well that we have this perception of all these people have nothing. They don't know what they're doing. They don't contribute. And there's so many areas we totally have it wrong.
And when we were young, right, the TV folks just went at us.
Yeah.
Right? Because they saw we were good. We were young. We just opened up a business. We came from a firm that was kind of big in our world. So they were like, the TV came at us. And with the TV prices, you got to do TV. And I mean, I get TV's important. TV's part of the formula. I don't want to say anything negative about television. Television is important.
Oh no, you can bash TV, just don't bash radio. That's fine. You can bash radio.
And the radio is big with Latinos. Yeah, radio is big.
And you know what's funny? I'll tell you this. So Entravision, Univision, all the big guys. It's funny that you have all these Latinos that are like, you know what? I don't trust the corporate. You know how big those corporations are, and you know where those corporations are operated from? Los Angeles. And Los Angeles. So it's just perception is reality. But you're talking to your culture and to your people. One of the funny studies back in the day, they used to measure radio by diaries. So they would give these people diaries, and you would put the things you listen to, right? The two most always best performing were the very African American stations and the very Latino stations, and they would put they listen for 30 hours in a day. Even though there's 24 hours in a day, but that because the passion was so strong behind this is my community. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think that the Latino and just being in Peru, everyone knows I was in Lima. This family unit is so important to the Latino culture, where it's not a very American thing anymore, man. You're so separated. Everyone's separated from each other. You don't see families playing together. They get together. So it is still such an important part of the Latino community, and you see it everywhere. You see it in Puerto Rico, where my wife is from, Cuba. Anywhere you go, you see these things. And I think that is just part of the reason why those communities and social media can be a community if used the right way. Just like Univision was, just like these radio stations, where social media can make. The problem is, though, it also opens up. It's an easy target for those bad actors, because now you can target people. So talk about how you use social media.
I mean, I'm not the expert to tell you how we use social media, but
really, come on. You want to take my chair, girl?
Creating content. We put on some ads on Facebook. People reach out to us. We reach back out, and we make sure that we reach back out all the time. And really, that's it.
It's organic,
and we're open to comments. The Google reviews are everything. People have been trying to explain SEO to me for 15 years. I don't understand it, or they're doing a bad job of communicating it to me. But all I know is that the more of these 5-star reviews that we're getting, we don't pay for reviews. These are organic, that our clients are agreeing to post these and doing it on their own. The Google reviews, together with the Instagram stuff, together with the Facebook stuff,
and doing good work.
And doing good work.
I mean, trying to be authentic.
And that's it. Trying to be authentic.
Well, it's got to be so much harder for you guys. You just said 70% of your leads might not even pan out, so you got to cost that much more per lead, because 70% won't even be leads. So you're actually going out. Most people will be thrilled to get the leads, but 70% are automatically almost disqualified, which is crazy. And that number can't change. You can't just lobby the government and say, "Let me get an extra 10%." So that makes it that much harder.
But the cool thing about the word of mouth, and a lot like the social media, it's essentially the same stuff, right? So after a while, people start to post comments and things about a certain attorney doing certain things. So every once in a while, honestly, this happened twice in 11 years. This happened twice, where we've had a client tell us, "Well, I'm going to expose you guys on social media," and my response to them is, "Go for it. That's what it's there for. Go for it. Say whatever you want, because
it makes it feel real too. No one's perfect, and no one expects perfection,
but it doesn't go anywhere. And that's something that we're super proud of. Is that that never goes anywhere, because I think we've done these things okay. But no, social media is everything, and that's just the way to go. We're kind of late to the game on some things like the TikTok. But we have to do it.
As long as I get up and they're dancing, I know we're gonna get a lot of views and a lot of calls. It's my dance moves.
That's what it is. It's your dance moves. All right. Well, we're gonna have to retrofit that over this video and make sure we get some of those in there. I think SEO is still very misunderstood, but one of the things, you were doing SEO already. You have a 10-year head start on, and the reason SEO is so important is because if a new company came in to try to compete with you guys, the barrier to entry is so high over your 10 years that they'd have to come in and pay exorbitant amounts of money towards SEO to do it. You've been doing SEO for 10 years. Doing things the real and right way is what SEO is. Transcribing and articles and all these things that you're putting out, that's what it is. Look, Google, all it's trying to do is decipher whether what you are saying is worth a damn or not. That is all it is trying to do. The algorithms are crazy, but it's trying to say, and if you get reviews from people and you're cross-linked to people and people are talking about you that have high authority scores, that's all it's trying to do.
Taking away the fly-by-night
And
businesses.
everybody that fakes it does one of two things. They have enough money that they can rig the system, because don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Money will make you seem you've done anything. I have seen it. I have turned the mechanisms. Fake, real, it doesn't matter. You can trigger a response from these entities by paying. But the other way is to put the time in, to do it the right way, to be that guy who pretends like, oh, I don't know SEO, wink, wink. I know that type, don't worry. But you guys have done a really good job of it. And the question I have for you is that as you go and as you grow, is there a level of scale you want to get to, or do you like the size you are? Because the next phase in anyone's life is scale. Is the business scalable? There are plenty of people who need your help. You know that. Are you comfortable with the level you are? Because that's when all of a sudden radio comes into play. When you're looking to scale or spread, or you want that brand recognition to keep the funnel building. I think we can talk a little bit more about this after the break, but talk about the both of you. And it doesn't look like you've had this conversation, so I'm going to make you do it on air. So what is it? Zach, we're going to start with you. You've talked less. What is it that you want? What do you see the company? Do you see it scaling, or do you like the boutique nature that you're at?
Well, so I guess in the natural evolution of, business owners, right, is that we want to see the business grow, right? Growth is great, right? Also, what's important is quality of work, right? And our lifestyles, right? Gio's got beautiful babies. I've got a puppy, right? So when it comes to where I want to be in life, and obviously having great employee, great staff, right? It's going to make this keep going, right? And reality is that we've been doing this, and we're able to teach other people. We're getting old, right? And being able to teach other attorneys what we do and the type of work we do is actually a privilege, right?
So we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And our work ethic and our mission.
That's a canned response. That was too good to be honest.
No, but reality is that we want to be ethical. We want to do good things. We want to scale. I love scaling, right? But we also want to do it responsibly to where the clients are not suffering, and they're not just getting like some attorney that just doesn't really care. So it takes a little while to get a clan together, right? That is about the mission, and to teach them, from where they're starting to where they're getting what we want to be, right? Yeah. It takes time. So scaling is important, but so is doing good work.
It may be an overused phrase, but it sounds like you've got responsible growth is kind of what you're thinking about. It's not growth for growth's sake, and I think that's part of
and especially in the field strategy we're in. And I think we're going to get back from break, and we're going to let Gio do his, so he gets a little bit more time to rehearse and prepare for it. But I think responsible scaling, because I think one of the problems is that ultimately you're still providing such an important service for people, but the more bureaucracy, the more expensive it is to work within the parameters that have been set up. And that is unfortunate, but everything requires hours. Everything's more expensive. You talk about USPS, well, people use it because FedEx is twice the price. So everything is more expensive. And I think operating in those parameters. So when we get back, we're going to go to Gio, and we're going to hear his take on scale. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.